please welcome on stage with me, Katie Morris and Marty Garza from Southwest Airlines.
Woo! Welcome. Fist bump, fist bump, fist bump, fist bump. Come aboard. Nice to see you guys. Before we go any further, I feel like I need to let you know that in case of an emergency, the exits are there, there, and there. Please take a seat. Before we get into it, I'm just so wowed by my own joke there that I forgot what to say next. So before we go any further, just like this morning, tell us a little bit more about what you do at Southwest. We have a clue, but I want to hear it from you guys. So Katie.
Yeah, so first, thank you for having us here to tell our story. Our goal is to be transparent and open and honest about successes and opportunities and learning. So really excited to be here. But I'm Katie Morris. I lead our Office of the CIO at Southwest. I support all of technology. My team has various functions. We support things like workforce strategy, executive communication, employee engagement, portfolio management and planning, but most near and dear to my heart is I have the opportunity to lead our LACE team. So that's probably what we'll talk a lot about today.
Absolutely, Seth. Thank you so much for that. Marty.
Marty Garza, I'm a leader in the technology department, and our team, our purpose and our focus is to deliver business value for our customers, and we do that through our technology solutions. Our primary customers are ops or operations, and if I was to dig in a little deeper, specifically that's our NOC or our network operation control. And so you can think of the command center that really runs the airline that gets you safely from point A to point B. And then we can't forget our crew members. So these are our pilots and our flight attendants. So all the applications that they need to do their job.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. All right, let me set the scene. So obviously here we are, it's August 2022. You guys have been on a business agility journey for over 3 years now. There are nearly 2,000 people involved across IT and the business. 2,000. This is phenomenal. We have to imagine the complexity of an airline. We've got crew, scheduling, training, aircraft, tracking, optimization, ground ops, maintenance, reservations, customer experience. I mean, the list is basically endless. And of course, technology supports all of that. So I wanted to start really with, let's start where you are now, then we'll go back in time. So where are you now? What are you focused on?
Yeah, so it's been a long journey. Really excited about where we are now. We started small and quickly realized we need to scale. We're a large airline. We're really complex, and so we're really focused on the portfolio right now. We're focused on connecting our strategy to execution. Really focused on driving lean budgeting and planning practices. Making sure that our teams are working on the highest value work for Southwest. One of the things that we hear about a lot is got so much demand and not a lot of capacity. So really making sure that we've got priorities, that we're limiting work in progress, and just really trying to make sure that we can optimize across all of our different portfolios.
Fantastic, thank you so much. So that's a big level of complexity, there's a lot going on, and I'm guessing it wasn't easy to actually get there. Probably a lot of turbulence on the journey as you went through. That's the last one. I'm not doing any more. I couldn't hold it in.
I don't believe that's true, Mark. I'm sorry. There'll be more.
Marty, talk to us about you being that early adopter.
Yeah, so we started our transformation in 2018. It feels like it's been years ago. But at that time, we were a project-based organization. Lots of technical debt, lots of legacy applications, and we definitely had a strained relationship with our business partners. Definitely, they would say we couldn't meet on our delivery or our commitment, and it was just not a really good situation for us to be in. So I definitely knew that we had a problem. I didn't really realize how bad the problem was. But I had this idea that if I could bring in some Lean Six Sigma guys to actually do a process mapping on what it would take from the point of ideation. So I'm a customer, and I actually...
Wait, is that the process?
Oh my God, that's it.
It's bigger when it's up here.
When I see that, my blood pressure starts to raise.
Well, we heard a similar story this morning, but take us back to that moment. Take us back to the story behind
the idea behind it was I wanted them to map from the point of ideation. The business has an idea, and how many steps would it take us to actually get to production? And what you don't see is, so when we had this meeting, I'll never forget it. I walk into the room, and it's a room of my peers. And you have the Six Sigma guys up front, and they're talking about how they came to this, got this process and how they mapped it out. And I actually thought we were going to look at a PowerPoint, and then they start to unravel this huge scroll, and they start to pull it apart, and they pull it apart, and they pull it apart. And I was like, this thing is going to freaking go like from one end of the room to the next. And you can see what it looks like right there. And the interesting thing is that's 90 plus steps, both business and technology, to actually get something to production. And then on the left-hand side, what we figured out, it was taking us 7 to 9 months of just governance and planning before a requirement ever got to our developers. 7 to 9 months before we ever saw any development at all. Amazing. At that time, we would do about a month's worth of development, and then we would chunk it over the fence to our testing folks, and we would test for 10 weeks. Mostly manual, no automation. So our testing cycle was actually bigger than our build cycle.
Wow. So you knew there was an issue there. Mike?
Knew that we had a problem, but that was really our aha moment, right? So when you talk about case for change, like do something different, that was it. It's gone, but that was it. And that really fostered where we started our journey.
So how did you get started? What were the early steps?
Really the big thing is we had our case for change. And I'd gone through some Agile transformations before, Scrum at the team level, and not a lot of success. But what we did differently this time is we took that right to the business, and we said, hey, do you recognize this problem? Do we both agree? And they're like, yeah, we got to do something different. So they were early adopters. They definitely had a seat at the table, made the decisions right along with us, and it just felt different from the very beginning. And I think what we realized, this was not a tech transformation. And that was really the foundation of rebuilding that trust that we needed.
Well, what did you put into the defining of roles and responsibilities at that early outset?
Yeah, I mean, really, we had to think about like what were the specific key roles that we had to go through this adoption. So we went through product owners, product managers. Do they live within the business? Do they live within technology? The importance of a scrum master and maturing your teams. But they were just key stakeholders along the way, and lots of good ideas. And really, they had a stake in the game, helping to solve this problem.
There must have been some early resistance. How did you get people bought in the beginning, and did any early wins help you move along?
I mean, yeah, there was early resistance for sure, but I think we started seeing wins relatively quickly. But I do remember the very first PI planning we had. So 100 plus people in this room.
Yep.
It didn't hold 100 people. We had no idea what we were doing. I couldn't get any of our people to talk at all. We forgot the freaking pizza, so we it was a freaking mess. And then you've got the naysayers on the side chirping and reminding me, it's like, you realize how expensive this meeting is. Like all these people, 2 days, you brought them in, like, are we really gonna do all this?
But didn't even feed them.
Yeah, exactly, and we didn't feed them.
Which is why they show up.
Yeah, but that was our first PI planning, and we quickly got through that. About the 6-month range, we started to see some improvement. Conversations started to change a little bit. Started really focusing on business value and not so much counting story points. And but that was like maybe we got something, but we really made it to the end of the first year. And as we should, we wanted to reflect back on in the journey. Did we make something from the investment that we had? So we made the decision that we had to measure this somehow. So we looked at our number of deployments. Okay. Now, maybe not a perfect science, but we said, hey, that's something that would give us a gauge. And so we measured number of deployments to production, and were they successful? And we looked at the previous year not in the model, and the year in the model. So the hot mess, which was the board, right? Uh-huh. That year we went to production, I think it was like around 28 times, because we were doing quarterly releases. And our success rate was 45%.
Oof. That's tough.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, we were bundling up so much stuff. It was all this manual testing, and it just wasn't good. And you see why our customers had lost trust in us. Fast forward, we're in the new year.
Right.
Changed the way we worked. We went to production 349 times that year.
Oh my God.
And our success rate was 93%.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
But I will tell you this, that was good, but I had to make sure, and I kind of was like, all right, are these numbers real?
Yes.
Like it seems too good to be true. I think our marquee win though was that we had an application replacement, and we had planned it out in the old model, right? So it was in that 7 to 9 months, and once they were done, they came out and said it's going to take 3 years to go to production.
Oh.
That's pretty typical for us, by the way.
Right.
So
okay.
3 years before you get any kind of value at all. But now we're in the new model, right? So we decompose that work. We built out our epics. We prioritize those epics, highest value first. We focus on our automation and our deployment pipeline. And by the end of year one, we had delivered 70% of the business case in the first year.
Wow.
So I have a question on that. The organization, the part of the organization that told you this is going to take 3 years to do, when you delivered success that quickly, what was their response to you and the team?
I was like, what's next?
But it was
What's
also,
next?
You've got this PID and this project ID, and you've got this start and end date. You gotta finish it, because that's what we do. We do projects.
Yeah, there was a lot of conversation around is like, hey, well, finishing out this work might not be the highest value thing. So our finance people struggled a little bit of like, hey, we've got a business case and a commitment we have to have. But that was some of the earlier challenges that we came across.
So I'm sure you saw the next challenge. COVID comes along. That slammed the airline industry. How were you able to respond, and what did this do for you?
You know, COVID was bad for everybody in the industry as well. And this is what I love about Southwest Airline. Like, priority number one, we always take care of our employees. Mm-hmm. It's what we do, and it's a special thing that we do, and COVID was no different. So we get into COVID, and we had to make sure that they were safe and healthy, right? But then we had to protect our jobs, or their jobs. We had been, I think it's 51 years since we started. We've never had furloughs, never had layoffs.
Wow.
And we were not going to break that trend. So we had to cut external spend. And I can tell you, so imagine you've got us in the model and you've got the rest of the organization not. And really the folks that were not in it, it was kind of like a Hunger Games approach to like, your project's dead, my project lives. Above the line, below the line, so you know how it goes.
I think people have experienced this.
Yeah, but very vicious, right? The Hunger Games, it's a real deal. But for us, on our side, it was a much easier conversation because we did lower our capacity because we lost the external spend, but we still worked on the highest value items, and it was just all about pacing it out.
Right.
So there was no tension. Yeah. So it was an added benefit. I didn't expect that, but it was really nice.
Interesting. So Katie, let me turn it to you now. I'm guessing that figuring out how you could scale this was really the next big challenge. Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, and that was a fun challenge. So Marty's over here telling his story about, hey, we're doing all these great things. You know, we went from deploying 20 times a year to 400. And so everybody's like, well, I want that. So, you know, I'm going to start my own little transformation journey in my own team. So forget the start small and test and learn, right? We're not very patient people. We want in on that. So one of the first things that we had to do was we've got all these different transformations going on, which is great. We want people to own their own journey, but also we're all kind of speaking from a book, right? So formed a LACE team, hired some really great Agile coaches, quickly wrote some standards and practices, and started kind of trying to standardize across all the different, you know, Marty followers.
Yes. There's a clap from the front row. That's Marty followers.
Yes. So that took a little while, but like Marty said, you know, SAFE does a really good job of introducing these terms and these titles that you're like, what does a product owner do? I don't know. You know, what does a release train engineer do? We don't have these job titles. So we introduced this, and we found that we had to spend a ton of time providing role clarity for these folks. What is training our leaders, right? How do you know what to expect from a product owner? What does that look like? So poured a whole bunch of time into rolling out new job titles, helping people with clarity of new roles and responsibilities and things like that. We stood up communities of practice. So, you know, we have the LACE team, and we're trying to kind of push the transformation across, at that point, technology really in pockets of the business. But we also we're not the police of it, right? We want people to own their own journey.
I'm sorry, I'm going to pause you. How did you encourage that? You used the word push, but I'm guessing it was much more gentle. But how did you get those communities of practice up and running and efficient?
So you got to find the people that are real passionate about it, right? And that's the key. So, you know, we've got a really great change leadership organization at Southwest. And so they really supported us, but really the key is finding those champions within the areas to say, hey, this is going to be hard, and there's not a ton of clarity, but like you've got to go drive this, right? So we stood up these communities of practice to try to get people to form, you know, Scrum Master community of practice, or, you know, release train engineer or product owner. And we quickly got to back out of it as a LACE team because those folks took it over and they run it today.
Wow.
And so that was one of the things that we did. We also focused on standardizing metrics at the team and program levels. So I think one of the things you guys did a really great job of is you started baseline metrics right away, right? So how do we know we're getting better? How do we know that we're meeting our goals? Well, you've got to have some metrics. And we really had to put a lot of momentum around changing the narrative around metrics, right? It used to be you never want to be read on a status report. And metrics can be very punitive, right? And so we put a lot of time into really trying to change the narrative of metrics aren't meant to be punitive. They're meant to, it's a point of inflection, right? Is our hypothesis correct? Do we need to pivot? Do we need to focus somewhere else? But you know, with all of that, you asked about challenges. You take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, right? So we're learning as we're going, we're testing and learning, and so you kind of have to get comfortable being uncomfortable and progressing, and then seeing that maybe that didn't work, so we got to change direction.
So I hear something very systematic, very methodical. I applaud you for that. I think it's great. But you have to be running into some resistance. What's the change curve like at this point? I mean, how are people reacting to you?
Yeah, so, you know, Marty talked about it. I've been at Southwest for something like 13 years, and this is my 3rd transformation. So, you know, and we've got a pretty tenured organization. So I'm sure that there are people that have lived through more than 3. So people are tired, right? Like, why again, right? We just got comfortable with this. Why are we doing this? So there was a lot of change fatigue. People were not really understanding why. And that's thinking back. I wish when we started this, we had a better why, right? We had some objectives, we had some catchy phrases. We wanted to be faster and cheaper, or we call it more efficient just because it sounds better. You know, we wanted to deliver more to our customers and faster. But we didn't really have a good why. Like, why should people get on board with this? Why should people be excited about this? And so I wish that we had that at the beginning. But like I said earlier, you know, we engaged with change leadership, and that is key because we still get resistance, right? People not seeing the value quite yet, or it feels very heavy, or it's uncomfortable. And so I just think, you know, working with a change leadership organization, finding those folks who are passionate about it, that are willing to kind of work through, you know, pushing through and continuing to push this agenda is just a really key piece.
So do you have a why now? What is the elevator pitch you use internally now?
Yeah, we do. We do have a why now. So, we went from kind of speed to market to now business agility, enterprise agility, right? We deliver very little value in silos. So if we need to achieve enterprise agility as an organization, that's our why.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking about change, and we get this question a lot, like, you know, what is one of your aha moments or whatever, and change leadership is really important. One of the things that surprised me the most was the struggles that my own leadership team had with the change.
Right.
So I can tell you, we talked about it, they understood the problem, they were excited about it. They would text me and be like, I want to be a change leader, show me how to help. I mean, we were like high-fiving, we're gonna go do this. And I'd really pivoted my vision to look into the naysayers. But then we kind of get into PI planning. And some of those commitments that we had previously, those hard dates, they were still there. And maybe we were slow out of the gate. And then all of a sudden, as the pressure started to rise and bubble up, they started to revert back to their old habits.
Old habits die hard.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense because they're all successful careers, and they've grown up in a different world. And so the change was real for them as well, even though they were willing and wanting to. And it's a challenge I have today. Like I'm like, hey, I have like an accountability partner is like, hey, am I too command and control right now? Is this too much the old way? But it's real, and it's real for all of us.
How do you help people like that are stuck? I'm sure in this audience they're thinking, yep, I got leaders, and they want to, but they're really struggling to get there. What did it mean to be personal and help an individual through that?
I mean, you just kind of have to call it out, right? And you have to be okay with the fact that you're not perfect and you're going to make mistakes. And you kind of have to make it a safe place for everybody for a multitude of reasons, right? It's like, I just want us to get better every single day. And sometimes we do that through mistakes and learnings, through errors and bringing down production, but we're getting better every single day. And as long as we have that attitude, I'm good with it.
So let me ask you a follow-up on that. Well, there's an old phrase, isn't there? Culture is what people do when they don't think anyone else is watching, right? That's really what drives them. How long do you think it'll take your organization for people just culturally to absorb this? This is their way. There won't be any of those old habits left.
I'll tell you when we get there.
Okay, good. That's a good answer.
I'll tell you when we get there.
Well, I see some frowning faces out here, Marty. Sorry.
Nice.
They know it's true. They know it's true.
So, Katie, to have a really powerful impact, of course, you've got to broaden it again, right? You've got to go from a team to a team of teams. You've got to broaden across portfolios or business units. So what's been the story there?
Yeah, so, we started seeing some siloed successes, right? Team level, team of team levels. And that's great. And we had some really good wins and some really good learnings. But I remember, I guess it was only in 2021. I guess it was a year ago. It feels like 5 years ago. But we pulled all of our senior leaders in technology together. And we said, we want to know your pain points, work related. We want to know your pain points.
Got to be careful.
Yeah, exactly. We want to understand what's getting in your way of getting things done. So I don't even know how many spreadsheets and spreadsheets of pain points we had. And we were sifting through them, lines and lines and lines. And we found themes. And our themes were, I don't know what our priorities are. Everything's a priority, right? And if you've ever sat through the end of a PI planning and they try to make you prioritize, you're like, but they're all one. They're all first priority, right? So too many priorities, not enough capacity, too much demand, and way too much work in progress, and please, for the love of God, can you get us out of project funding, right? Those were the themes that we heard. So you look at that and you're like, well, that's not solved at the team or program layer, right? We have got to start focusing on portfolio. We have got to scale up a level, and we've got to look at those fundamentals. And so, that really drove our second case for change, was our pain points. But interestingly, we collected all these pain points from our technology folks, but when you talk to our business customers, they generally have the same pain points, right? Okay. So it resonated with them. When we started to talk to them about that, they're like, yeah, I feel that, I get that. So that made it a little bit easier to form this second case for change, right? We've matured, we've learned, and we've got to focus on this. So, what did we do first? Of course, we trained everybody, right? So we pull all our technology executives together and a couple of key stakeholders for a 3-day training in January. And you're going to learn LPM. We're going to learn LPM together. So we did that, and then we ended it with a workshop. And we said, okay, you've learned all this great stuff. You've paid attention 50% of the time probably, but you've learned all this great stuff. Now, let's put it to practice, right? What does this look like? What are our next steps? And so we had this really great workshop, and we used value streams, which is also another interesting term that y'all have introduced, so thanks for that. We used operational value streams.
You're welcome, I think. Okay.
We used operational value streams, and we said, okay, how do we deliver value as a company, right? And we landed on 4 portfolios, and this may sound really small and insignificant, but for me, we landed on 4 portfolios that don't match our org chart. And that was I left being the happiest person, because I'm like, look, it's not our org chart, which is where we tend to go when we talk about how we get work done and how we organize, right? So we did that. We landed on 4 portfolios. We have all our knowledge, and we're like, awesome. We're going to go drive this change across the enterprise. Okay, well, guess what? We can have Marty go talk to his business stakeholders, and we can have our other portfolios go get their business stakeholders on board. But hey, we're going to talk about planning and funding, and those aren't things that we can control alone in technology. So we had this really awesome conversation with our senior VP of corporate strategy and with our CFO. And we talked about LPM in their terms, right?
Yeah,
because
their language.
Had to talk in their language. And we talked about why, right? Why do we need to do these things? What will it do for you? What will it do for our organization? And really, at the end of the day, we said, we don't need you to go solve this. We just need you to champion this, right? Mm-hmm. We have to have certain controls in place, obviously, when you're talking about changing the way we fund and prioritize. But we need to know that you're on board and that you're going to champion us kind of testing and learning. And they were like, maybe start small. We're like, yeah, we got it. We'll start small. But that was such a powerful conversation when I think about transitioning from kind of internal to technology to broadening and
the wider business.
Yeah, right?
Let me ask you one quick follow-up, super fast. Any top tips for our audience on training executives? Because from the way you told the story, there's two things going on, right?
Don't
There's
call
the
it training.
training, but there's the influence as well.
Yeah.
Any top tips?
Yeah, I am very passionate about speaking in their language.
Right.
You know, you can go and you can say, you can teach from a book and you can say all the safe words and all of those things, and they gloss over, right? So for us, what makes it really powerful, and I would love your opinion as an executive, for us, what makes it really powerful is, you know, we're gonna say these terms, but think about it like this, right? And putting it in Southwest terms. These are you have to make it real for them so they understand what you're saying.
Yeah, we took, so when we went that training, it was I think it's a 2-day session, LPM training, and then we added the workshop. So 3 days, and I'm geeked out the whole time because I'm digging it, but a lot of our peers don't know it's brand new to them.
Right.
So it's like, man, this feels pretty heavy. And for an executive, that's a big commitment.
It's a huge time commitment, 3 days.
So we knew we needed to make this have a more Southwest fit to it. So we have been able to skinny that down, at least for the executives, to 1 day's worth of training.
Okay.
You're not gonna get certified with it, but it has a Southwest flair to it. It makes sense to it. We use examples that resonate with them. When you talk about their priorities right now, it just makes a lot of sense. And we just did that training, I don't know, probably a month ago. And we've had great feedback, and now we're getting other people saying, hey, when is that coming back again? I need more.
That's good.
So I want to ask another question in that, because the number one question I've heard all week long is executives, how to get them in, how to get involved, how to get them. What were they receptive to when you were sort of talking in their language and trying to find the why? What hook did you see people react to and go, yeah, you know, I'm interested in that?
You know, using your brains framework.
Thank you.
I think you have to find what is relevant to them, right? So for our CFO, it may be, hey, you're not going to have 7,000 IDs that you have to go sift through in business cases, and right, we can simplify that for you. We can be more accurate with the way we do our forecasting and things like that.
Right.
But for somebody maybe on the business side that is on your customer of what you're delivering, it's, hey, you can get more throughput, right? We can be more aligned. We're not going to ask you to write requirements, send them over to us. We'll deliver you something in 6 months that's not at all what you asked for, but now our project is done, right? So for me, I think it depends on the audience, and you have to hit on their specific pain points.
Yeah, I can tell you for the operational folks, when we had that conversation, it was all about, man, you've had a lot of success when it's within your department. But as we're growing and with complexity and the airline grows, more of our demand is cross-department, and we're horrible at it. We can never get it prioritized. We've never made traction on it. So we know that's our future. It's if you want some of that, this is how we're going to get there.
Clever angles, really powerful.
Pretty amazing. So let's talk the experience now. So Marty, how does it feel now? Here we are up to date. How does it feel, and what is on your mind?
I mean, it's 2018 since I've started this, and I'm super proud of the team. They have come a long, long way, and I probably don't say it enough. But I'm just so proud of them, but also encouraged on our potential and where we're going. I can see where we're going, and we're gonna be great, and it excites me. I can tell you, I heard you ask the Oracle guys something about, would you ever go back? I'll answer that question. I would never go back.
I would never go back.
It's not gonna happen. I agree with you guys, the Oracle folks. It's not gonna happen. I would never give up. Yes.
Right.
I would never give up the relationships that we built with our business, the trust that we have with them today, the transparency. They're part of the sausage making. It's painful oftentimes, but it gets easier. But I would never give that up.
Nice. Katie, experience so far?
I think for me, I don't know that I would have pictured where we are today.
Right.
I don't know that when I took this role and this opportunity, it was small, right? It was hey, go do this safe thing, go figure it out, right? Test and learn. And so thinking about kind of where we started and what our objectives were and how we had no idea what we were doing, and we just tried it, and it got better, and sometimes it got worse, but we always moved forward. But thinking about where we are today and thinking about making that transition from just trying to get our tech teams better to like really impacting our company, right? Like really having an impact on our operating model.
Yeah.
And you know, we have a lot of like kind of pep rally type things at Southwest, and last year our executives used the term agility a lot, right? And so we're like, oh, they're speaking our language. They might not know it, but they're speaking our language, right? So,
And let's be clear, that's our CEO that said that.
that's right.
That's amazing.
That's our
CFO
CEO using that
too.
language.
Yes.
That means it was resonating, it was working.
Yes.
I love this. By the way, not quite knowing where you're going is pretty scary for an airline.
Yeah.
But you did tell us. Boom. But you did tell us that you want to be totally transparent and share with this amazing crowd some of the things that you've learned along the way, and maybe even touch on things you might do differently, areas where you've learned something and you'd like to share. If only I'd known.
Yeah.
I'll go first. I'll throw out a couple and then you maybe a couple of your favorites.
Okay.
This has been one that started to come together recently, and I can't tell you how important it is to protect your continuous improvement mindset. You've got to make that a priority. And when you don't, your maturity, your agile transformation and that maturity is gonna be impacted by that. You're not gonna get the results that you're looking for. I actually was talking with some of my peers yesterday about this, and they were explaining why we really weren't doing innovation sprints anymore. And it's like, man, there's just so much demand. And I'm like, that's where the magic happens though, right? And that engineers love that. That's their creativity. And so you really gotta protect that, make that a priority. One of the things that I would challenge you, if I went to your PI planning session and I looked at your PI objectives, would I actually see something that talked about continuous improvement? If you don't have that, I would argue you're not making it a priority. Because every 10 weeks we lay out what the business objective or the priorities are. If I don't see that, I question what your priorities are. So that would be my first thing I wish I would have known.
Nice.
The second one is, and I'm very passionate. The second one, and this is like, I'm really passionate about this one, and it may cross some executives, but I'm in this category as well, is I actually think the executives, half the time you're the problem with the maturity and the adoption. And I'm included, I'm part of that. And here's why. I will tell you, we don't need an executive sponsor. I'm so freaking sick of seeing that term. We need someone to model the change. Like, you cannot delegate this out to your team. They will not respect it. It will not stick. So we need an executive role model is maybe the term to use.
I like it.
But you got to roll up your sleeves and you got to live the change.
It's great. It's really good. So, you've given us what you've learned. I love it. Katie?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is hard. This is hard. I mean, I don't have a more eloquent way to put it, but this is hard. And I hope people know that going into it, right? There is no do this and this and this, and at the end, this is what you're gonna look like, right? There are no two companies. You know, we're big fans of, hey, go find someone else that has done it. We'll bring them in, and they'll tell us how to do it, right? Well, that doesn't work. So there are no two companies that have done this the same way. And so for me, I think recognizing it's hard, there is no easy button. There is no real clear path of how you're gonna get from here to here, right? So make it your own, right? That's where we really start to kind of feel things progress, is when we take the fundamentals and the principles and we really understand the meaning behind them and we apply it to what works at Southwest, right? Make it your own. It's gonna be hard. It's not clear. You don't know what you're doing, right? You don't know what's next. You don't know if what you're doing is gonna work. It's a hypothesis. So you gotta own it, right? And to Marty's point, like modeling that behavior, celebrating our successes, but also celebrating when we fail, right? And making that okay, right?
Yeah.
Like we don't do that. We didn't do that very well. And I think we're turning the corner on that. So I think that's one of the things for me. And then I think the other thing is, you know, we talked about metrics and how it's so important, because if you're not measuring, you have no idea if you're getting any better or if you're achieving what you set out to achieve. And so we did a good job, I think, of supporting teams and programs with team and program level metrics. But what we didn't do a great job is, and I talked about this a little bit, but when we started, it was like you gotta be faster and cheaper and get more out the door, right? Well, that's not a vision, that's not an objective, right? So I wish that we had had more clear metrics and objectives as a transformation organization, essentially, right? How do we know this investment that we're pouring into the LACE team and all of these people's time to go through this journey? How do we know that it's impactful, right? How do we know that we're getting where we're wanting to go? So I think for anybody starting out on this journey, I think starting with those very clear objectives, the why, the metrics, and just knowing that it's gonna be hard, those are my key takeaways.
Thank you.
So you're all the way here, and it's definitely a work in progress, is what I hear, right? Incredibly proud of where you've been, and with the people that you've got. What do you see the next opportunity being in taking advantage of this model, Marty?
We kind of talked about this before, and we are not there today. Obviously, this is going to continue to roll out. We have our 4 portfolios now, safe, and we're setting up trains across new areas. But I can, in our near future, I hope, I can see a day where we can turn our entire organization in 10 weeks.
Wow.
And that's powerful. So imagine this, like all your PI planning, we're lining up those cadences. The market changes, it changes all the time in the airline industry. We might want to buy an airline, who knows? Right. But within 10 weeks, we can shift our entire organization, our entire technology department and business, and focus on that and react to the market. And I feel like that's a powerful thing.
That's powerful.
That really is powerful.
And how does it play into the strategy, Katie?
Yeah, so for us, we're going to try to continue to roll out LPM across the rest of the portfolios, right? In typical Southwest fashion, we were going to start with one, and so we started with all of them, right? So we're going to continue to try to figure out how to scale and support everybody doing all the things at once. But as we mature this, and I kind of talked about this a little bit, but like to me, if we get this right and if we do this well, like outside of our people, this is our secret sauce, right? Like this is our competitive advantage. This is how we win. This is how we beat our customers. So, the next step of that is really connecting our strategy, which is somewhat waterfall, to the way that we work, right? Connecting our strategy to execution and building this into our multi-year planning, right? I think a lot of people think, especially on the business side, Agile is whatever sounds good to you that day, that's what you work on, and there's no planning, right? And that's not the case. So, really trying to drive these practices into our multi-year planning and really connecting our strategy to execution.
Well, if your journey so far is any evidence, you're going to get there. And we'd love it if this was your competitive advantage together with your people.
We would too.